Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Devil's Cut, a horror podcast about all the things that go bump in the night. If they're spooky, scary, or spine-tingling, we're here to talk about it. I'm your resident manboy possessed by a devil, Matt Young, and here with me, as always, is the skeleton everyone should want in their closet,
Eric Rossi.
How are we doing this week? Another beautiful week hanging on the beach. The California, what's that highway? It's right there. We can see it from where we're sitting. Is that by a beach? The PCA, the Pacific Coast, PCH. Is that where? Can we see that?
There you go. The chips are flying by.
Welcome back to another episode of The Devil's Cut, but another episode of Matt's Wet Hot Summer. Although the past 2 weeks, this one and last week, a little bit of a break from the wet hot, because we had to catch some premieres.
Well, they're hot. They're hot off the presses. They're hot off the release.
That's
the hot. You're bringing the wet. I'm bringing the hot.
That is a good way to spin it, for sure. So yeah, we're here this week. Last week we talked about Maxine. We loved it. It was awesome. Everyone, I hope you listened and went, you know what? I am going to go see that movie. And I hope you bumped its numbers up.
I hope you did your civic duty to this country and to Mia Goth, despite being a foreigner, and went and gave it a good review and spent all your money there.
Yeah.
Mugged a bootlegger.
Yeah, I actually didn't check. I haven't checked what the numbers are doing on Maxine.
Last time I checked, it had a bigger opening than X and Pearl, so it was succeeding.
Pretty good. But we're not here to talk about Maxine. We are here to talk about a movie that's decidedly much more feel bad than Maxine was.
Yeah, way more feel bad. Just everything bad, really.
Yeah,
except for the quality of the film, which was good.
Yes. So we are talking about Longlegs, and this one, I really am going to have to mostly give the reins to Eric because he put a lot more thinking into it than I did. Yeah, so we're talking about Longlegs. I'm going to let Eric take the reins mostly on this episode, but I do have to say we might have found ourselves deep in the clutches of Mr. Longlegs, because in our bungalow last night, I found a note that was left by him.
Oh no, a cipher?
Quite sure what it means. Maybe you can help me decipher it.
I'm afraid he's passing me a pad of paper. I don't know what I'm looking at.
That's the mystery. It's up to you to figure it out.
Is this a Punnett Square? What is this?
It's Loss.
Oh my god. It is Loss. He fucking lost me. That son of a bitch. I'm looking at these symbols. I'm like, why does this look familiar? I know what these mean. God damn it.
I'll put the note on Discord for everybody so they can see it. I know, great to open up the podcast with the audio medium with a visual gag, but I just had to get him.
He did. He fucking got me. But yeah, I have said on previous episodes, I've been really looking forward to this movie. This movie for me has been one of the most anticipated movies in a long, long time. I'm a huge true crime guy. I'm a huge fan of, Mika Monroe. We both are here. She is an absolute scream queen.
Totally. I mean, It Follows is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah,
so.
Same. And it's just been a very weird rollout of a movie. It's a viral marketing campaign that we'll get into later on that has really, I think, swept the nation by storm. I think there's lots of people, horror, real big horror fans like us, and like very normie audiences alike, have been captivated by this weird, mysterious ad campaign.
Yeah, it was sort of, I would say, akin to, although I wouldn't say as intense as, the Blair Witch Project or the Paranormal Activity, those marketing campaigns where it was just like, this movie is so scary, we're gonna not even show you the movie, you're gonna have to look at the people in the audience screaming with how terrified they are.
But I will say it's an interesting look at the way you can market a horror movie if you put it up next to that movie Arcadian, also starring Nick Cage, that came out this past year that we watched.
We really liked that one,
and we
too.
loved it. But it's funny because in Arcadian, all of the press and all of the marketing had Nick Cage at the forefront, when in reality his character is a very like secondary force in the movie.
Yeah, he's really not.
And he's got very little screen time.
Yeah, he doesn't really do all that much.
But it was funny that I thought they were like, we need to sell this movie on Nick Cage, as to where Longlegs was like, we need to sell this movie on the idea that you can't see Nick Cage. He's in the movie, and we promise we will not show you him at all for the next few months.
Yeah.
And in fact, we're not even going to show Micah Monroe.
Yeah, the trailers just did not really give anything
Didn't
about
give
what
anything.
this movie was. Which will also, get people pretty curious, I think. Especially like more normie people, because they'll be like, what is the deal with this?
Yeah,
Maybe we will go see it.
We'll touch on it in a little bit, but it was a fucking thrill ride for me. But I think an important place to start, which will help inform a lot of the rest of our discussion, is Satanism.
Well, did you want to give like a quick like elevator pitch of the movie? It's really not that complicated.
Yeah, I
on
I
the
can handle
surface.
that. Let's see. So, no spoilers, because after this, we are definitely going to start talking spoilers.
I have questions.
This is a movie we need to dive right into because we got a lot to chop up. But elevator pitch: Mika Monroe plays Detective Lee Harker, a semi-clairvoyant, absolutely powerfully autistic FBI trainee who is brought in to work on a 30-year-old cold case to help find the elusive Longlegs killer, a family annihilator played tremendously by Nick Cage.
Yeah, that is true, yes. Okay, so yes, I mean, I'd say like the first half of this movie really is kind of like a FBI procedural, and then in the tail end it gets really horror-y. But I'd say if for anybody curious, a really close comparison, at least for the first half of the movie, is like a Silence of the Lambs, just like without Hannibal, and if Jodie Foster was, how'd you call it, powerfully autistic?
Powerfully autistic.
That would be like my, like, if you were into that, you'll definitely get those vibes from this movie.
Yeah.
But like you said, Satanism and the devil does have a heavy presence in this movie.
Heavy presence would be an understatement.
So I guess that is probably a good place to start.
I think it's important for us culturally to divide a specific group here, which is the difference between Satanism and devil worship.
Yeah, I because I'm into devil worship.
Yes.
I love when they worship me, right?
Yeah.
Satan, I mean, he's the boss, right? So he's always getting the praise. It's nice that occasionally, like, us devils get thrown a little bone, you know?
And you got thrown a huge bone in this one.
I was boned up, man.
So Satanism, to the uneducated, is a term that evokes some of the most recognizable imagery in not only religion, but horror as a whole. Big horns, serpents, bloody pentagrams, occult rituals.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were to ask like a Satanist what they believe in, it might surprise you. Benevolence, the quest for truth and justice over adherence to law and order, respecting one another's freedoms, bodily autonomy, the pursuit of science. These are all some of the core values at true organized Satanism. To call it a religion would be like oversimplifying the history and the overall philosophies of the group, but no true Satanist would ever say that they worship the devil. In fact, they have made it almost their whole personality to correct this misconception at every chance that they get.
Mm-hmm.
They don't believe in the deity described in the Bible as the devil at all. Their belief system is completely separate from the Christian experience. They just use Satan as the embodiment of like a metaphor for the liberation of humans from false truths and oppressions and organized religions.
Right. So like the real story.
Yeah.
The stuff that the stuff the church doesn't want you to talk about.
Yes. Now, on the other hand, we have the devil worshippers.
Again,
and
these guys are different.
This is exactly what it sounds like. They stand in direct opposition of the evangelical or Catholic counterpart, citing the Christo-biblical deity of the devil or Lucifer as their god. While the former is a well-organized congregation, here the latter presents itself in most cases as like a anti-Catholic zealot nut job. Think Richard Ramirez.
Do I have to? Do I have to think about him?
He's a pretty well-known...
Thought about him a lot lately.
Yeah, he's a pretty well-known devil worshiper. He claims to be a Satanist, but in reality, all of his practice align more so with devil worship.
Well, I mean, based on your definition of the Satanists, really any of these serial killers would be more of a devil worshiper, right?
True. They take an adversarial approach to the Christian experience by falling prey to its insistence that the devil is here, he wants your soul, and he loves violence. In most cases, these people are either seriously abused from the church at an early age or suffer from unmitigated mental health issues.
Fair.
All of this might sound like splitting hairs, but it should be no surprise that the layman sees no difference in identity or philosophy between these two groups.
Yeah, no, I can see how a lot of people wouldn't, because I mean, as somebody who grew up in like a Catholic household, I mean, the way the world around you, like, if someone says, "Oh, he's a Satanist," it's like,
Yeah, the only thing that comes to mind's eye is just a bloody pentagram, like right out of the gate when you hear Satanist.
Yeah, but those are cool.
Which is foolish, a foolish mentality to possess.
Oh, but I like them.
They're cool. They can be cool.
We have so many in the house.
In the last 3 years, we've seen a huge uptick in the religious horror subgenre. The devil has been on an absolute rampage at the box office. In the first half of the decade,
I feel like we've been swimming in the devil
all summer
long. Good
long.
name for a movie.
Swimming in the devil, that's pretty hard. That's a pretty hard one.
But I feel like it's been devil movie.
Yeah, in the first half of the decade, we saw the rise of the Conjuring franchise that puts the Christian superheroes Ed and Lorraine Warren at the forefront, exorcising demons and devils out of any yellow-eyed demon kid they come across. But now that we're approaching the second half of this decade, you can observe a huge shift in the religious horror that's barreling its way to the top. On this show alone, we've covered The Last Exorcism, Pope's Exorcist, Immaculate, The First Omen, and now Longlegs. At a quick glance, you may not notice it, but if you're looking long enough, you can see the underlying villain in all of these stories is the faith in the Catholic Church itself.
Very true.
In the 70s and 80s, the satanic panic was used by the church to grab power and political standing via propaganda and censorship of creative media that led to the death and the incarceration of innocent men and women all over the country. But now, as the church overreaches into our lives and freedoms again in the modern age, we've seen the genre rightfully hold up a mirror to show us that the devil and all of his doings are actually a product of the church, because without the fear of the devil, we have no use for God.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing about the First Omen.
Yeah,
they were like, we gotta, or I guess in the original Omen too, was
yeah,
like, we have to make the Antichrist because no one likes the church anymore.
No one believes in us. We have to start the end of the world so that people believe in us. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that they're really into.
Yeah.
All of this is, predecessing the fact that, we had this, fun cat and mouse FBI serial killer movie. But in reality, this movie is a Trojan horse for family and religious trauma by way of Silence of the Lambs. It's just snuck right in there. One more trauma one for us.
Always, that we can't get away from them.
But I'm glad that they wrapped it up in the cat and mouse serial killer style movie that we did get, because it makes for such a fucking crazy movie. I think it's a good place to talk about Oz Perkins, who is the writer-director.
Mm-hmm.
While some may recognize his name as legacy of the son of the late Anthony Perkins, who's the original Norman Bates, or cite his on-screen roles in Psycho 2 as young Norman and other cameos, he's really solidified himself as standing in horror with his more modern contributions. He was the writer-director on The Black Coat Daughter, I Am the Pretty Things That Live in the House, Gretel and Hansel, which love, and a brief cameo in Nope.
Yeah, his film pedigree, especially within the last 10 years, he's got some pretty strong showings in his body of work here. I will say though, all a little divisive, because his style is, I'm going to burn this as slow as fucking possible.
Yes.
Until right before someone's about to leave the theater, and then I'll kick it on. Every single one of his movies is like, you really have to be in and on board to watch it, because they are so slow and methodically paced. On purpose, but I will say, like, if Gretel and Hansel is, for a movie where the kids get kidnapped by the witch in like the very beginning, is one of the slowest movies I've ever watched.
I love that movie though, because
it's awesome.
As like a hobby esoteric occultist myself, I have to mention this guy's clear and deep understanding of rituals, faith, and occult texts. Gretel and Hansel is like a visual feast for those who are familiar with like real world studies of right and left hand magic. He pulled no punches in Longlegs. The movie is a bountiful offering of Christo-Judaic occult beliefs and rituals. He's pulling from volumes like The Golden Bough, which is a study of comparative religion and an encyclopedia of how different cultures and religions engage in rituals and faith from like the late 1800s.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like I was saying last night off mic, essentially like all of the ingredients for like the Longlegs soup are just so bizarre and like carefully crafted, and it just steeps in this like supernatural side of religion and like parental manipulation of objective truths, and it's just like the beautiful, perfect little freakazoid movie.
Yeah. I guess one last thing to go back on to Oz's body of work. Did you like The Black Coat's Daughter?
I did.
Yeah, that was the one with Sabrina, right? And then, right, wasn't it like Sabrina the Teenage Witch?
Yes.
And then Emma Roberts. They were the two. Okay, yeah. Yeah, that one was pretty good. Again, like a really, really slow movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I did like it. I'm the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. That was one with there was like the mold in the walls, right?
Yes. Yeah, and
that one was so good, but it was like ghost mold.
It was like ghost mold, and like she was like living with some sort of like author whose books were coming true. It was just a very, very slow movie.
Yeah, but he has a very cool specific style. Apparently he also did an episode of the new Twilight Zone series, which I would like to check out.
He does have a very specific style, and it's very present, especially in this movie. He talked in interviews a lot about how he's like really unhappy with like the mainstream like filmmaking scene right now, because he feels like a lot of people are lacking like a particular point of view and like a unique eye. So he really tries to like put forth a like artistic visual before anything else.
Is that him talking about most, like, all movies or horror movies? Because I think that's actually kind of like a wild stance to have on horror movies.
No. He's talking about movies in general.
Okay.
Movies in general, like specifically mainstream movies.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, if you're mainstream movies, I could definitely see that point of view.
I will say he does get one mark against him, because in this press tour he was talking about how he has absolutely no interest in seeing X, Pearl, and Maxine. He still hasn't seen them, and he probably won't see them.
That's crazy.
Which is a little pretentious.
A little bit, especially if you're looking for like an interesting point of view on filmmaking and horror movies like that. That's so crazy. But it would also be weird for almost any of the movies that have come out this year. Like, we are in a golden era of horror auteurs, like where it's like you can't fucking like turn a corner without some dude making like the best artiest horror movie you can think of, and including this guy.
Yeah. But I think it'd be foolish not to mention the marketing.
Yeah, we started on it.
Yeah, the movie was like preceded by this slow drip viral marketing campaign that almost serves as like a companion experience to the film.
Mm-hmm.
The site thebirthaymurders.net provided the curious and clever code crackers of our times a Zodiac-esque series of ciphers to decode with encrypted files, along with esoteric references to occult magic, crime scene photos, music, and other media like 911 call audio, and other inspirations for the film. Just all like in this weird milieu in these like encrypted files.
Yeah, it was like it looked like a MySpace page filled with like with gross images and like hyperlinks.
Yeah. And if you were reading the Seattle Times a few weeks ago, you might have noticed the entire half page occupied by a mysterious Zodiac killer-like code with a message printed at the request of Longlegs. But as far as like mainstream marketing for the movie, they carefully crafted this like slow rollout of ever-evolving like teasers and gimmick trailers to intrigue the more like mainstream audiences. All of it culminating in this cryptic and like spellbinding ad campaign focused around withholding information from anyone not truly invested in looking at the evidence long enough. I find stuff like that to just be so entertaining. And I like that it didn't go too far. Like, we played Alan Wake 2 on stream for what felt like 3 years. And that's like a huge like multimedia experience as a franchise as well.
Yes.
Where it's like, it's writing, it's, you know, these live action scenes, it's music, it's all sorts of stuff. But I feel like they went way too far out into the weeds with it. And I feel like the Longlegs team really struck a perfect chord.
Well, we'll see how Longlegs the game does. All right.
But I think to talk about Oz again for a minute, he's like self-admittedly not really into true crime, but he knows the rest of us are, right?
Yeah, he's like, fine, I'll do one.
So his real objective with this movie was, like I said, to Trojan horse a story about the relationship between a world that the parent builds for their child through lies and the process of protecting their child, juxtaposed with that same child undergoing the like life-altering events when they realized that the world that they live in was not the one that they were provided. And since becoming a father himself, he's only grown more fascinated by the complexity of the relationships between parents and children, and the decisions parents make and the compromises that they conceal to protect their child from the truth of the circumstances.
Sure.
I found that part to be like super interesting because it plays out really well in the movie to an uncomfortably relatable fashion. Like, I don't know about you, but as an adult, to experience something similar where like a parent of mine shared some information that then recontextualized essentially my entire life prior.
Yeah.
The information alone was traumatic. The experience of then having to comb through your life and figure out like a new foundation of truth for yourself is such an arduous task. I would not wish on literally anyone.
Yeah, I can't say I had ever had that exact basically like with one of my parents, I found out their shortcomings like relatively quickly.
Yeah, when you're young, it's easy because like the foundations of like truth in your life are still like sand. They haven't really shored up.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, I can't. This is all everything's fucked up, and adults don't know nothing. I learned that one like really early, so I can't. I didn't have to have that moment where I have to sort through my past and be like, what was actually going on here?
It's crazy to go back in your life and then have to like figure out like, oh, that's objectively true. That was a lie. That's objectively true. That's a lie. Is just it takes so long, and I wish I had the opportunity to seek professional help to get through it. But I did not.
We made a podcast instead.
Yeah, we're here instead.
You had your options were be creative or go to the doctor.
Yeah, correct. I didn't have time for both.
Yeah, so here we are.
A lot of this movie's language, though, is like translated through specific camera direction. So he's trying to utilize negative and positive space. And he often frames our main character, Lee, in shots that provide her with either way too much headroom, which, you know, is like a basic rule of filmmaking. You want to leave some space above your character's head to, you know, frame a shot professionally. Yeah. But the idea is he wants to leave all of this extra space to convey all these events and things that are happening outside of her direct purview. Mm-hmm. And it really like contributes to the existential dread that's like looming all across this movie. I love it. I want more of it. I hope he makes more fucked up weird movies like this. He said a lot of the script was more creatively assembled than like conventionally written. He was trying to avoid like scene headings like interior, exterior, and instead writing down like characters' thoughts, song lyrics, music cues, memorable images from the scene.
Yeah, kind of like mood boarding the scene instead of directly storyboarding it.
Which is crazy. I don't even understand how the fuck you do that.
You just kind of go like, all right, here's what's going to happen this scene. Let's just like wander around until the vibe feels right for the... Maika, where do you think you should be doing this?
Yeah. But I think it worked out really well. I liked especially their... The whole idea of having a FBI agent that is like partially clairvoyant is so fun because it makes your main character like almost omniscient and also unreliable at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, we'll get more into that I guess when we get like closer to what the actual events of the story, but no, I agree. I also think it's just also, yeah, you don't really see that, like, the superpower. I guess it's not a superpower. It's kind of, right?
It's kind of.
Like, Spooky Wife was telling us there's a show, which we've all watched. There's The Outsider, right? That Stephen King series adaptation. But it's based off of, one of his books. And there's like all of his books are kind of connected, but they're these specific ones that have like a through line of, there's this one like detective, and then there's this one like private eye chick who is like, she's like on the spectrum, and it's like one of those storytelling devices where it's like they're magic almost because they're on the spectrum.
I mean, it's a very similar character type.
Yeah, I think her name is Holly in the Stephen King books. Yeah. And we're getting confirmation again. She is clairvoyant. She's just also, but it's kind of one of those things. They always tend to come together. Like if you're a little bit psychic, characters usually are always like some sort of like autistic or on the spectrum somewhere.
But it was such a like, I've never left a movie that made me go like, I know I've seen the whole movie. I love it. I was following it start to finish. I know there's another piece. And through like researching everything I did on the movie, I feel like so whole and in just like essentially taking a brain bath in this fucking movie for like 48 hours.
It's funny because I had sort of like the opposite experience, and not necessarily in like not in like a negative way, but for me, I just got like so well. For one, a lot of the movie gets like lost to me because it's like heavily deals with like ciphers and which basically at some point just become like fucking like calculus to me, you know.
It is. So, holy shit. I looked up specifically how the people were solving the Longlegs ciphers, because they were coming out with all of these like coded, like I said, Zodiac killer like messages. And so I was cruising through like horror Reddit to find people who were decoding them, and I learned that the messages are coded in like layers, so that the first right off the bat thing you have to decode is the Longlegs alphabet, which is a series of characters that, you know, correspond with a normal, you know, American alphabet. But then on top of that, all of the words have an additional cipher called the veneer cipher, which is this super complicated process of like finding out a key phrase and then using that key phrase to then decode the jumbled message that you have. And each word has its own version of that veneer cipher throughout the messages. So it's just like fucking codes on codes on codes on codes, and you really got to dig to the fucking bottom to really get the information. And when you get the information, it's like reading a nonsense poem from a serial killer. It's like, fuck.
Yeah, my brain just is not the kind of brain that's capable of dealing with ciphers and puzzle solving of that ilk, you know, and to that degree. My brain just can't do it. So the second Mike Monroe's character like started being like, "Oh, it's this algebra, it's an algorithm," and I heard algorithm and my brain went. So like that whole thing, I was like, okay. It might as well have been magic to me when you know, like it could have been all supernatural from that point on, because like algorithm, I can't even contemplate how that works.
It's pretty cool. I was glad that I took the like time to like wrap my head around how it works, and instead of trying to solve it, because one felt significantly more productive.
Yeah. So a lot of the movie has to deal with that, which has already confused me. And then, you know, the movie does not do like a lot of explaining, at least not for a long time. So I just felt like I was like lost and drowning. I was like, what's happening? What does this mean?
I think it does suffer in that way where you have, and other movies have done this too, where like they pitch you this idea of a grounded like true crime thriller, and then they bury the fact that it has like a supernatural element. So like I feel like if going in you know that there is a supernatural element involved, then you can kind of like let go of the questions and just take in the scenery until the end. But it comes so late, the like self-admittance that there is a supernatural stuff at play, that it's a little bit harder to figure out.
Yeah.
As a result.
Yeah. It does make the reason the movie feels confusing and like nothing is like real. I mean, it makes sense at that point, but for a while I was like, is this like, what is this serial killer doing? Because again, I was still in sort of like the mindset of
the procedural mindset, right?
I was still in the grounded, the Silence of the Lambs kind of, which is what I was more expecting. Like I didn't expect the supernatural elements of the movie. At first, when I heard that that our main girl was like going to be she's like clairvoyant or a little bit psychic, as like the movie kind of I was still on board, and I was like, I think we can still get like a pretty grounded thing out of this. It's just, she'll just have like an occasionally inkling of,
she just has
where
great
something
intuition.
is.
Yeah.
Which is just a great device, though, for like a procedural thing, because it's like you can write your character out of anything. Because they're like, oh,
yeah,
you know what?
they just know.
They just know.
They just know where the clue is. Yeah, they figured it out because they're intuitive.
Exactly. But I still didn't end up hating the supernatural part of it. It made sense once it all like came together. I guess it kind of has, for me, it has a little bit of the experience I had with Mother. Where like you're watching it and you're like, man, what is this fucked up house doing? And then at the end of that movie, you're like, oh, it wasn't necessarily all like real. It was, they're just they're telling something else here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so like these events didn't necessarily really happen.
Well, the thing about Longlegs is all the events portrayed did happen. It's just a matter of understanding that, like, okay, it happened with like a little bit of magic too.
Yeah, well, at that point though, like once I got to that, I was like, oh, this isn't like a real world anymore.
Yeah.
Like this is a magic world that just facilitates this little story.
Yeah.
Whereas like I will say after it, I wouldn't believe like a sequel to this movie. I don't believe that it's like a world where other things are happening, and there's other killer. Like it's just, for me, it's this very like a snow globe of a world, instead of like
definitely.
I'm in, at first, like because you can feel it like in Silence of the Lambs, like you can feel that there's like the presence of like a greater outside world. Who Hannibal Lecter is going to go off and do stuff, but that's just like a completely different movie, right?
I think you phrased it perfectly well though, with the idea of like a little snow globe of a story, because that's a lot of the way that like it's talked about, like, by Oz Perkins. He talks about it as like, I don't think about what happens next. I haven't thought about what happens next for Lee Harker at the end of it. This was the story. This encapsulated thing was what I wanted to tell.
Yeah. His other movies are like that too. I mean, I feel like The Black Coat's Daughter, same thing.
Yeah.
It just feels there's like very for both movies, maybe more so this one, like a world where like we're interacting with like the FBI and like all these like there's, if they're dealing with things that are like out in the public, in Black Coat's Daughter, it was like you're at this school that's like self-contained, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like in this one, even though you're still dealing with all that, it feels like once the character's like off screen, they've walked into like a void, it's like It's like a little vignette of a world.
What I found funny from looking at like Twitter and stuff is that everyone who goes to see it is just posting the same picture of Bill Clinton. There's like one there's like one background portrait of him at an FBI like headquarters that helps inform you of like what the time period is.
Yeah,
it's just so funny because you walk into, you kind of like reverse POV, you're following the characters as they walk into the room, and it's just like back there on the left, and it's like
Bill Clinton,
this big glaring Bill Clinton. You're like, oh, okay, I know what year it is.
Okay, we're doing 90s.
Yeah.
It's funny too, it really happens like right when you're thinking like, and when does this take place? It's like it's like, bam, gotcha. Don't worry about it. The whole audience that we were in, like, not there's that many people. They were like,
oh yeah, everyone went Bill, Bill. But yeah, let's get into some of the nitty gritty though. Let's get into the I'd say broader strokes of the film.
Yeah. Well, so what we were just talking about with the Bill Clinton, so the movie takes place kind of like what, it's like at some point in the early 90s.
Correct.
And it really feels like a 90s movie too. It's got that grit to it. The like cinematography, like the style, the tendencies like make it feel a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because again, for the same reasons that, or for similar reasons, where you had mentioned that he likes to like let the scenes breathe, like pull out like the camera to evoke like a certain mood. You also get like a very 90s vibe from that, because back in the day, we are the way films were made, they often tended to like have like a lot more like pulled out, like far shots,
bigger scope of the scenery.
Let the scenery breathe, let everybody breathe. There's a lot of that going on. These days we're like really really
we're
tight,
really pulled in,
a lot, like all the time, to make for easy cuts and shit.
Funny, just coincidence, we were talking about when we were talking about In Violent Nature and how that director was talking about how he was drawing from Guy Van Zant's movies.
Mm-hmm.
Same situation here. Oz Perkins was like, yeah, I was a huge Guy Van Sant fan. Really loved the way he handles like his scenery, his like connections with like nature as far as like informing the not just the scenery, but like the plot.
Yeah.
And again, another beautiful execution.
Yeah, so the movie, again, so it takes place somewhere in the early 90s. We're following Maika Monroe's character, Lee Harker, as she, like, the movie starts, right, where she's, like, it's like her first day. I don't know if it's her first day on the job, but it's first day in this task force of people who are looking for some killer.
She's in a task force that's canvassing a specific area, looking for
some other unrelated killer,
like,
right?
Yeah, total gumshoe shit. She's like on foot, knocking on doors. Have you seen this guy? Her and her partner roll up into this neighborhood, and she starts getting this like weird kind of inkling. She's clearly like becoming disassociated to the moment. She's looking around, she's noticing details, she's starting to pick up on this weird intuition, and then she tells her partner, he's in there, he's in that house. And she's looking at this house, and he's like, there's no way he could be in that house, there's no way you could know that, let's just go knock on his door.
All the houses look the same, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it turns out she did pick the right house, because the second her partner like knocks on the door, he gets his head blasted open. It was actually pretty I was whoa.
It was extremely startling, and it's really fun. I thought to kind of like red herring us with the idea that like we don't know who they're tracking down. We just know they're tracking down a killer. Yeah. So to put like a completely different, the end of a different killer's story at the beginning of this Longlegs story is really fun.
Mm-hmm. And then, so after, now that investigation's over, she then gets like tested by the FBI, for psychicness. Is this like
back in the
this
day,
can't be a real thing.
No, back in the day, the CIA and the FBI were doing all sorts of crazy shit with, what the fuck is it? It's in Stranger Things. Why can't I think of the name? It's like a form of clairvoyance. It's a form of seeing, not astral projection, remote viewing.
Oh, okay.
They were really obsessed. Our government really loves the idea of remote viewing, but they're essentially, they have her in a dark room and they're testing her against these like weird, ambiguous, like artistic representations of like geometry and like color values.
These are weird ass pictures they're showing her.
And then they just ask her questions like random number generator from 0 to 100. What's the value?
Yeah.
And then she'll reply, and then they'll hit her again and again and again. It's almost like the Blade Runner testing, like the cognition tests.
Yeah, mixed with the fucking Clockwork Orange keep your eyes open video.
Yeah, but apparently she scored extremely well. Which is only half.
You're just like, yeah, I'm like, well, I wish that counted as really well for me in school.
True, but the idea that you're half clairvoyant enough or half like psychic enough to predict or to know the value is significant when all the other people who are testing around like 13 or less %.
Yeah. But it is funny where I do like that line. So after that, Mike and Monroe's character Lee, so she gets recruited by these two other FBI agents. One is played by Blair Underwood. He's Agent Carter. And then there's Michelle Choi Lee is Agent Browning, right? They recruit her, and they're like, man, it's so impressive. They have her out like in the field, and they're like, this is pretty impressive. You did really well on the psychic testing. I mean, they're being a little more sly about it. But and she's like, well, I only got the questions like right half the time. And it's just funny, like having somebody who's supposed to be psychic be like, I'm only kind of psychic.
Yeah, I'm only a little bit psychic.
It's like, well, aren't we all then?
But it's very cool. I like the way that they kind of like introduce us to the case that way, where there's like, oh, we have an extremely intuitive person. Maybe we should put them on this like 30-year-old cold case that seems to be ramping up again.
Yeah, and the case is cold because the murders that happen, right, are a family is annihilated by the patriarch, right? The father of the family kills the wife and all the kids. I think it's like always families with girls,
yes.
Right? And
within 6 days of their 14th birthday.
Yeah. But all of these...
Excuse me, 9th birthday, their birthdays are always on the 14th.
Yeah. And these families, but they have no connection. None of these families, they don't have any way to connect them at all, except for the fact that there's always a note left behind on like a birthday card that's like, and then the note is just a cryptic, the cipher we were talking about earlier, just weird ass symbols and shit. Signed Longlegs.
Secret detail: all of the families possess the same red toy piano, and they're all Catholic.
Okay, well, that is a connecting. Maybe that would, that's a relation. They could have said like, oh, they're all Catholic and they got the notes.
Yeah, it's pretty evident if you read through the birthday murders website.
Yeah,
because it mentions either that they are members of a specific church, or that they are being buried at a specific church, or that their services are being held there. Or they have a fellow church member who's like a character witness that's like, oh, I would have never expected like them to, be family annihilated by that guy. That guy was totally normal. We love that guy.
But yeah, so the FBI is looking. They know that there's this guy. They're assuming there's this guy. He's a serial killer. Somehow he gets the dads to kill the family and then kill themselves. We don't know how. So we're looking for this Longlegs guy. Obviously, there's like, how are you even possibly find a guy with that MO, right? Because there's other than the note, there's no other evidence that anybody else was inside the house. So it's like, well, I guess we do need a psychic girl. Yeah,
there's no DNA, there's no sign of force entry, there's no there's just no inkling that anyone outside of the household was involved.
Yeah, so they They recruit psychic Lee Harker, and she just gets on the case. She's very excited, as much as she is capable of being. She's very I
would say autistically stoic.
Yes.
She has a hard time relating to other people, and she has a very clearly hard time communicating on like a person to person level with people. She's very much like facts forward. She's like all business. In fact, the only time we see her smile is like halfway through the movie when she's on the phone with her mom, and her mom says something along the lines of like, I know you can't tell me about what you're working on, but is it like really nasty? And she smiles and she's like, Mom, I don't think the department has a like subsect for things that aren't nasty.
Yeah, that is like the only time when she's like making a joke with her mom, that's the only time she
it was
really
like a
has
very
any reaction.
Specific choice, because the rest of it was like intentionally like she's very rigid. And then I guess Oz was like, hey, what if we just saw the curtain peel back for like 1 second in the scene? Let's just try it. And then, she gives that little like smirk, and then that was it. They were like, it's perfect. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But she takes to the case like a fucking duck to water. It's really cool. They give her this file of all of the murders, which includes all of these ciphers and all of the photos that were in the encrypted files on the birthday murder site. And she takes them to this empty room, which this is a part of that like negative space thing that I really loved. She goes to this empty room in the bureau, like headquarters that she's at, and she sits down on the floor. She takes off her shoes and she spreads the files all out over the floor. And then we have all of this huge negative space behind her in an empty room. And she is fully enraptured into just the details of the case in these files. So you have this lovely contrast between like a room that is essentially useless, full of all of the only information that matters. And she falls asleep on the floor, and her superior comes to get her, and he's like, hey, there's a such thing as looking at that stuff too long, right? And it's hilarious because when she shows up to the next discovered crime scene of Longlegs, she immediately pulls out a notebook and like figures out the cipher and like translates it. And he's like, how the fuck did you do that? And he's like, she just looks at him very matter-of-factly, and she's like, well, I looked at the evidence long enough.
Yeah, the movie honestly is really is gorgeously shot and very purposefully shot.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the most like careful movies I've seen in quite some time, where everything feels like they really want you to be looking at something,
Yeah,
or taking something in.
yeah. There's very little like
downtime. It's
Yeah,
like it is
yeah.
it is a bit of a job. You have to like really be looking.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so like absolutely pumped full of like symbolism and shit and like little details. But once she gets going on the case, she ends up with a letter of her own delivered to her house. And it's a Longleg note that essentially confirms that Longlegs knows that she specifically is looking for him. And he mentions that, like, if you tell the Bureau that you have this note from me, I'm going to kill your mom because I know where your mom is.
Oh, yeah.
And her mom is, like, the only connection she has outside of work.
Yeah,
she doesn't have any friends. She doesn't, like, she's not shown in any romantic capacity, like, to have any other, like, partner or anything. She's just a very, like, stoic, I'm hyper focused on this job kind of person.
Yeah, I mean, the only other person she knew was like her partner in the beginning, and he died.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what happens after that is, when do we get our actual first in? Well, I mean, I guess we get the first encounter with Longlegs at the very beginning, when there's the like really tiny like aspect ratio shot where it's like, what is it, like 4:4?
I think it's 3. I think it's 3:4.
Yeah, and that's actually the very opening of the movie, and that felt like so creepy. It felt like snuff movie level. Disturbing. Where
there's definitely a lot of it that comes across that way.
It opens like where there's a little girl, and she's like walking in like away from her house in the snow, and Longlegs makes this like gross creepy noise. It's like hoo hoo, and then it's like, it's not gross when I do it here in the context of joking about this movie, but like if you were in just like walking away from your house and that noise,
someone cuckoos you,
and then you
shit myself.
She looks behind her, and you see just like this, because it's so far away and the film is so grainy, you just see this like weird like mane of hair like peeking out from behind the corner, like just seeing a full grown man's head peeking out like from behind the corner of your own house, like it's so like stomach churny.
Should we talk about Longlegs now?
Yeah,
I have a bunch of fun info about his
Yeah, because I think
backstory.
So Micah Monroe's character gets going and progresses through her trying to solve the crime, investigate what the ciphers mean and stuff. At some point, we do get our first encounter with Longlegs.
I would say it's not until we, as a viewer, end up seeing Longlegs a few times prior to Lee, because Lee doesn't end up actually seeing him with her own eyes until she is like...
Until he's caught.
Caught and in custody already.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have all these weird interactions with him in this like weird underground like basement workshop where he's creating these dolls.
Yeah, these big like life-size girl dolls.
And the dolls are important because it was one of the few things recovered from the scene of the last murder scene that they went to. They had managed to recover it, and they noticed that it was essentially a professionally crafted doll to the likeness of the child whose birthday it was going to be.
Right. And the one they find on the inside of the doll's head is like this weird little like metal ball that like hypnotized the... What doctor did they take him?
Let me break it down.
To?
So they're at their... It's like they're in the FBI like mortician's office. And
Yeah.
he's the one who's been
He's
charged with
dissecting
dissecting
this
this doll. And he's like, it's a totally normal doll other than this weird metal orb in its head. The orb is hollow. I've done ultrasounds on it, but the only bizarre quality is that like it makes this weird resonance when you scan it. And he's like, I was convinced that it was talking to me the entire time I was here by myself. I kept hearing the name of my ex-wife, and it freaked me out.
But anyway, here you go.
But yeah, that's all I got for you.
They take it very well.
Yes, yeah. And it's cool. You start to see her psychic abilities are affected by the presence of this orb. She sees these like visions of a serpent.
Yeah.
And cat out of the bag style, we eventually find out that Longlegs has somehow through his devil worship discovered the ability to impart some demonic presence into these metal orbs.
Yeah.
And then the point of the dolls is he's using it in almost a voodoo style ritual. It's not like voodoo specifically, but it's this concept of sympathetic magic where you're using an effigy of someone else to impart some sort of like effect or like magical curse on them.
Right.
So he's like implanted these little seeds in these little girls' heads and then put them in the home, and they don't know how he's getting it in the house. All they know is that the doll has something to do with the murders.
Right, and they also don't know.
They don't know it's a supernatural.
Full of evil and it's full of the devil. That's something that comes later, but we are telling you that's what this is.
Yeah,
and so I will say I actually prefer Longlegs, like the guy, all the way through the movie until we find out he's doing like magical stuff. Mm-hmm. And then he becomes like a little less interesting to me.
I think he's about to become way more interesting for you as we go through this. And you
maybe, I hope so. But yeah, we get some weird shots of him, right, like in the weird his basement workshop. And there's also like a couple scenes where he's just like going to town, and like there's one scene in a drugstore.
He goes to like a hardware store. He goes to a drugstore. Yeah,
and he's just buying weird stuff and just kind of acting. He's just it's so hard to describe.
He has a very performative quality to him. He has this kind of like persona and personality of someone who is clearly a performer.
Yeah, like Spooky Wife was talking about how he was very clown-like.
Yes. And that is all on behalf of things that happen in like the development of the character. So they took like Oz Perkins and Nick Cage sat down and really started getting to talk about the character in pre-production, and they were really trying to figure out how to make it work. So part of what they tried to develop was like a almost backstory for him that would just never be like touched upon. Mm-hmm. And what they settled on was that he was like a like 80s glam rock guy who got into the scene like late in life and then was too old to be accepted by like his audience. Like he essentially aged himself out of the persona. And in an attempt to keep up with that like feeling of looking and coming across as youthful, they put him through all of these like facial reconstructions and like elective plastic surgeries. And they were like, well, how can we make it look authentic? What does like plastic surgery in Oregon in the 90s look like? And they were just like, it's got to be like hatchet job after hatchet job, and it creates this disgusting like bulbous appearance to like his cheeks and his like upturned nose and his lips and his chin. He's just very bizarre.
Yeah, okay, so that context makes why he looks like such a freak make total sense. And now that I know that that was the idea going behind it, I'm like, okay, yeah, that looks exactly like that.
They were also really heavily referencing Lon Chaney in the Phantom of the Opera. Nick Cage is a huge cinephile. He's, really into the fucking classic like horror performances. And part of that is he always felt like all of those characters have a angle of compassion about them, where it's like, oh, it's not their fault that they're this way. It's a shame that they're this way. And he tried to impart like as much humanity into the visuals of the character as he could. He gives him these like white snakeskin boots and he's like all like bizarrely androgynous. So he like speaks with this high-pitched affectation that Nick Cage says he took from his own mother. And they were trying to just impart like this visual history that explains that like this guy was a human before he was Longlegs. He is still a man, but like this isn't a monster, this isn't a creature, this is a human who was essentially tapped on the shoulder by like evil one day.
Right.
And then now he's compelled to do all of his dark deeds. There was a specific thing where Oz Perkins was talking about how he stole the white makeup from a phase of Bob Dylan's career. And he really liked it on Longlegs because it was like, it gave him this persona of like, I'm performing. I'm here to perform. I have all of this makeup on. And in one sense, it makes me more visible because you're like, what the fuck is that weird guy in makeup? But at the same time, it makes him more invisible while he's covering up all of his like scars and like weird plastic surgery problems. Again, a reference to, Lon Chaney's Phantom of the Opera.
Totally. He is a bizarre character. Nick Cage does a like fucking tremendous job. And only a little bit was I able to be like, okay, this is Nick Cage,
Yeah. That's what they wanted. They wanted to make sure Nick Cage didn't completely disappear, but they wanted 90% to be something else.
Yeah, and it really does feel that way for most of the movie.
And he self-admittedly loved the idea. He was like, I was able to deliver a performance as Longlegs that I could not have done with my own face.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, the ability to be someone else under the makeup and like be someone else on camera was like super freeing for him, and he was able to like conjure all of these little things that like made Longlegs specific, including, like I said, the inspirations from his mother.
Yeah, into the voice. His voice is disgusting in this movie.
Yeah, it's so weird.
In the best way. He's so creepy. Really is like I would say Longlegs is totally like to keep harping back on Silence of the Lambs, the Buffalo Bill of the generation.
Yeah.
It's definitely. Like I'll be thinking about like those two characters like the same way. They're just that kind of like specific level of disturbing. Like even though they're just a man, like they're just they feel like something.
They feel like something more
gross.
and other. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's an extremely well crafted character, but we eventually get to see him. Like full face see him when Lee Harper gets to see him for the first time. And she's brought in to try to help interrogate. And at this point in the movie, we have already met Lee's mom. Maybe we should go back and talk about Lee's mom for a minute.
Yeah. For the first half of the movie, we only know her through her voice on like phone calls that Lee makes to her like every like once in a while. Her mom feels like that she's got this very, I wasn't sure what to expect or if we were ever going to see her, because she just had this very slow, like flighty, like ephemeral, like voice and way of speaking. It's like almost like she was like high as shit. When you like call somebody and they were like asleep like a second ago and they're like, hey, what's going on? That's what all the phone call conversations with her mom are like.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. When she ends up finally going to her mom's house, I got an extremely clear picture of the type of relationship they had and the type of childhood Lee had growing up, because you walk into her mother's house in her childhood home and it is like fully hoarded out. It's like cluttered. Every flat surface is occupied by a stack of bullshit. There's laundry piled up in baskets on baskets. It's just like, I've worked in hoarded houses when I worked for that like cleanup company, and it was just like perfectly set dressed to a T. It's like this weird extension of someone's like mental health can be observed in the way they hoard stuff.
Yeah, I've never, had to live in like a hoarded house, but I've been in them. I've been to like over people's houses who are their family is like that. It feels like otherworldly being in a place that just allowed to, like, we're just chaos and like dirt is allowed to just be like inside, where it's like, no, we're supposed to be clean here.
Yeah. And it's funny. It's like, again, it's that perfect contrast between the other shots and the other like sets where like everything is so threadbare. There's like almost nothing in the like structure, like even in Lee's own house.
Weird log cabin.
She has a weird log cabin. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck that was about. I didn't get any answers about why she lives like Abraham Lincoln. But there's not really a whole lot of shit on the wall. The furniture is very minimalistic, but to see like the house that she grew up in, it totally makes sense why she is like so order oriented and so like sparse as far as like decor. But it's cool because you get that contrast between all of that and this over like maximalized hoarding situation that's going on in her mom's house. We find out that her mom is very religious.
Apparently, yeah.
She asks her like multiple times, like, are you still saying your prayers? It's so important that you say your prayers. Your prayers are the only thing that protect you in this world. And then once she gets to her mom's house and she could see her face to face, and she asks her, like, have you been doing your prayers? And she's like, Mom, I've never done my prayers. My prayers scared me as a kid. They scare me now. I don't think they do anything. And she laughs at her and she's like, you're right. They don't do anything. And it's that first kind of inkling into the relationship of like, oh, I've been coddling you for your whole life to protect you, but now that you're out in the real world, you can see that like all of that was just a facade.
Yeah. Especially in the line of work she's in. Yeah. And yeah, so that's her mom, right? And then we get like a couple scenes where it's like it flashes back to, you get to see the mom when they were all younger, except the mom looks younger now than she does in the flashbacks, which I thought was really weird.
Yeah, that updo they gave her aged her way hard in the flashbacks. Yeah, I don't know why that was.
I was confused for like a hot minute. I was like, oh, okay.
It was the 80s. Yes, it was a very 80s hairstyle to have, but it's funny to see her like in the future in the 90s where she's got this super, super long, like unkempt hair.
Yeah, it was very funny. Thing to go back to, they've caught Longlegs because basically
she realizes after she's like decoded his like birthday murder cipher, which is like the calendar of events around all of these birthdays that are on the 14th, which is when he killed, these families. And she brings it to her commanding officer's attention. She's like, hey, I'm almost positive that he's going to murder on this specific day, 6 days on either side of it. We need to be aware of it. We need to go like find him. We need to figure out what the fuck is going on. It comes back that her birthday, Lee's birthday, lines up with the next birthday in the sequence, and she's already known that. She just can't tell her boss that because she's afraid of what Longlegs is going to do to her mom.
Yeah.
So she has like information that the FBI doesn't have, and then it's revealed to us because the boss, her boss, starts getting really suspicious of like, what is your connection to this case? Like, why are you so driven in this case? This was a dead as a doornail cold case for 30 years, and all of a sudden you get attached and it comes alive. He ends up looking in her file and finds out that when she was 9 years old, her mom made a call to the local police about an intruder on their property.
Right.
Which we then, as viewers, figure out the opening scenes of the movie were Lee encountering Longlegs as a, 8-year-old about to turn 9 who was about to become a victim.
Right.
So she goes back to her own home and starts pressing her mom, like, what do you know? Why aren't you telling me? And she's like, I have forgotten more things to protect you than you will ever, know.
Mm-hmm.
But as you know, I've never thrown out a single thing. So she goes up into her childhood room and she finds a clear as day photo of Longlegs that she took the first time she saw him. And then everything's come rushing back for her. She's like, oh fuck, this is the guy. I got to bring this to my boss.
Mm-hmm.
They start a fucking manhunt and
he's pretty easy to find.
He's super easy to find.
You see him from a mile away. It's he's so white.
Yes.
It's like it's like when the Joker comes out of the fucking pit. He's so bright white. He's like a pillar. You can see him no matter where he is in the scene.
Yeah, everything he wears is either gray or cream or off white
and whitewash.
It's just so weird.
It's so gross. So it's like he's waiting at a bus stop, and it's all of a sudden 800 cops and FBI agents.
I
show
loved
up.
it, and I clocked it when I was watching it. And I was like, "Fuck, this reminds me of a different shot." And I love those shots where the cops show up, and they all show up at the same time. But Oz specifically wanted to essentially recreate the shot from Seven, where he's detective, and then everyone in the precinct pulls out their gun on him in the lobby. And he's like, I wanted to do that scene, but I had to figure out how to do it in the Gus Van Sant way, where he's just out in the middle of a field next to this bus stop, and he's the only thing there. You can see him, like you said, from miles off, and he's just freely making himself available to be captured.
Right.
Which seems like you wouldn't want to do if you were a serial killer.
Yeah, this is what at this point on is where the movie started to get we take a full supernatural turn.
Yeah, we starting to unravel the dark machinations that exist behind this plot.
So Harker gets to finally interview him, and I mean Nicolas Cage gets a crazy weird ass monologue to recite. Everything he says is cryptic. Nothing really means anything except it means 800 things.
Yeah, it's all very revelations heavy. Excuse me, revelation.
Yeah, that's it. They correct that in the movie.
Which is funny. I found out online that apparently a lot of people have lost Who Wants to Be a Millionaire over that information.
That's really
because
funny.
they insist that it's the Book of Revelations and not the Book of Revelation.
Mm.
And that there goes all your money.
Oh man,
get him out of here.
That's so funny.
But yeah, they it's all very revelation heavy. All of the murders, a lot of the names of the families are references to parts of Revelations. There's the Wormwood family. There's fuck, I can't remember their other names, but there's just all of these little all of their names are essentially references to, if not Christian mythology, super deep esoteric occult shit, which was fun. I like all the fun little like layers of shit they got going on in this movie.
Yeah, it's layered. It's like a fucking onion.
Yeah, it's like a Shrek.
It's like a Shrek. And so eventually, the interview that Lee has with what's his actual name?
Cobb. Something Cobb. I forget the first name, but his last name is Cobb.
Yeah. But we just call him Longlegs.
That'll be LL to you. LL Cobb legs.
See, the whole discussion or interview comes to a head when no pun intended, when Longlegs just caps off his little monologue by smashing the ever-loving fuck out of his face on the desk, which is we've seen. It's funny, we've actually seen the whole face smashing, the desk
self face smashing
doesn't really it doesn't really have the same punch to me anymore, because I saw it in talk to me, and I've seen it in a bunch of movies. So I'm like, yeah, sometimes people do that.
Yeah.
But it was still it was so brutal because the gore after the fact when Longlegs like finally like kicks off and like goes dead and limp at the table, like the like hole that is left where his nose would be, like, but it's like clearly the prosthetic is like ripped off, but it's like, I don't know, it's so disgusting.
Well, again, it goes back to the like surgery thing with his face and why his face looks that way. That's why he's able to kill himself that way, because the like skin and the tissue of his face is so like not stable.
Yeah.
There's like very little like underlying material that is structurally sound. So as he's busting his like face in, all of the like reconstructive prosthetics within it are just giving way, and he like breaks his nose off, his cheek caves in, his forehead
gross.
splits open. It's so nasty, but it's so cool. And it's just like, it's like a blood, like a real like Gallagher moment where
yeah. There's blood all over the walls of this room. It is like, it's like being in the splash zone.
Yeah,
dude.
Lee jumps out of her chair and like presses herself against the wall to get away from him. And as he smashes his head in, it looks like somebody took like a fucking ladle of like pasta sauce and went right across the wall.
Yeah, we've all done that. Like you drop the spoon back in the pot and everywhere. Dale Cobble also was.
Oh, that's
Longlegs.
Dale. Okay,
Dale
Cobble. Which is funny. He's a little doll maker. He's cobbling. Which is, I guess, a shoe
that's
trade.
Shoes, but, you still got to make shoes for the dolls. But so the mystery or the case is not over, though, because they had all, like, Harker and Carter. By now, they'd surmised already that there's an accomplice. There was an accomplice because this guy's a freak. Nobody would let him in their house. So they were like, well, there must be somebody who the family felt safe around to let into the house that would be then making these families die a lot. Die a lot. And at some point, she goes off on her own.
After the interrogation, when they lose Longlegs, like when he kills himself, he gets pissed off because he's like, you've been having us run down this fucking stupid theory that he's got this accomplice or whatever. Well, congratulations. You were so focused on that, you let the dude kill himself. We had him. He's in the room. He's in handcuffs, and now he's a bloody mess on the floor. Good fucking luck with the rest of this investigation.
I mean, in her defense, like, he could have done that to himself at any time.
Yeah.
I mean, he was gonna.
Yeah, totally. But so now she is still convinced that there's an accomplice, and she's like, all right, well, whether or not any of this is true, my mom knows something that she's not letting us onto. I need to bring her in for questioning. That's like become apparent. She shared information that, my mom had this photo at her house. So now she's like not complicit, but implicated in some way that like, you have information we need. So they send her with a different partner to go essentially collect her mom and bring her in for questioning. So we show back up at the house, and she's Mika Monroe's character Lee is inside, and she's like kind of like stalking around the house, and she can't find her mom. And then outside we see this poor partner who's sitting in the car with the windows rolled down, and Lee's mom sneaks up on her dressed in full nun garb and blows her away with a double barrel shotgun.
And in a nice pulled out room to breathe shot too.
Paints the inside of this fucking windshield like a goddamn bomb.
And what I thought was really funny is then she walks around to the other side and gets her from the other side.
Yes.
I'm like, overkill, I think, but it was a funny little shot that she did.
It's just to drive home the fact that, Lee's mom is very clearly committed to whatever fucking cause she is a part of, because she is now done her diligence and walked around and double killed this poor partner.
But yeah, so this is now that we realize that the Lee's mom is the accomplice that she's been looking for, because it would be weird if this was unrelated.
Yes. She sees her mom pull the second shot, And that's where we get that beautiful shot of like her like covering her. She's like, it's a profile shot where she's looking out the window and you see her like throw her mouth open. She puts her hand up her mouth, big gasp, and she immediately like reaches for her sidearm and like runs outside after her mom. And then we're confronted with her mom holding one of these Longlegs dolls, like hostage at gunpoint.
It's just like standing up straight
in the yard. And Lee is like, what the fuck
what
is
did I
this
walk
doll?
in on?
What is going on? What is this? And she kind of spills the beans like, oh yeah, he figured out how to put a little piece of himself in all this work, the man downstairs, and he needed me to finish the job. He needed me. I protected you. He wanted to take you away from me, and I made a deal with the devil to keep you safe. And then
and all I had to do was put his creepy dolls in people's houses, and then
Yes.
they would all die.
So now we find out that she's been the one showing up to people's houses. She's been telling them like, oh, the church knows it's your birthday and you've won this opportunity. They've made this doll for you. It's a gift from your local parish, blah, 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 blah. So the families accept this doll openly into their house because they're good Christians. And that's how they kind of plant that little seed of evil in every family.
Yes. And then
Mom blows the doll's head off.
Blows the doll's head off, which then then that's when we see like the black smoke like come out of the doll's head, and right after that Lee passes out.
Yeah, we see black smoke essentially fall out of the back of Lee's head also, and we realize that like Lee's glaring lack of memory of this was all the doll's influence. They have a very specific line where Longlegs says, I remember the day that you decided to go into law enforcement instead of becoming an actor, and we had a good laugh about that. He's talking about him and her mother. All of that is all influence of the doll. Her entire career path her entire life has really been altered by this like weird run-in with Longlegs, and she's now realizing she's been a part of his plot the whole time.
So she wakes up, and then she's supposed to be at a birthday party for the agent Carter. Earlier in the movie, he makes her come to his house and meet his family.
Yeah, and his daughter invites her to her 9th birthday party.
Yeah, so something in her mind is like, hey, you're going to be late for her birthday party. You're going to miss it. And then, obviously the mom who's going to be there, right? Because she makes her way to Carter's house.
But when she wakes up in Longlegs' workshop, which by this point, as a viewer, we've realized is in the basement of
her childhood
home. That's why he's the man downstairs. And so she runs upstairs and she discovers his car in the garage and takes off. And she has this revolver that was inside the car.
Yes. Obviously left there for her.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
She makes it to Agent Carter's house and confronts everybody. The mom's there, Carter's there, his wife is there, the daughter's there, and a doll that looks just like the daughter is there. And I thought this scene was really cool because you could see that like everybody knew what was about to happen.
Yeah.
Like everybody knew, including like Carter himself knew that he was like about to murder his whole family. Because like the influence of this doll, right? But the actor, Blair Underwood, he was like so interesting and convincing as somebody who is being forced like by like a presence like to be happy and normal-ish. Like you could see in his eyes though, like he was like he was like looking like he was just going about his day and everything was normal, but his eyes were like something's happened to me and I'm gonna kill my whole family. It's just a crazy.
There was like a shortness to his a frustrated shortness to his delivery that was like so spot on.
Yeah, it was really creepy. Eventually, so while Blair is there, she gets there in time before anything happens. She does kind of just stall until and let Carter take his wife into the kitchen and murder her off screen.
It's funny. She's like, no, like, you don't understand. My mom is in on it with Longlegs. She's right there. The doll is right there. We need to get her out of here. We need to get your daughter to safety. Like, they're targeting you. I didn't realize I was a part of this too, but we got to get you out of here. And he's like, what are you talking about? We have to cut the cake. You know we have to cut the cake.
So yeah, he does end up taking his wife out off screen and killing her out of the movie. And then
he comes back around the corner and charges at Lee.
Right.
And Lee puts two in him and puts him to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And then turns the gun on her mom, who jumps up with this knife and plants one right in her fucking skull.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really funny because if you look at the entry wound, it has like peeled open in like, there's like the obvious part where the bullet went in, but there's also like a cross shape where the skin has like protruded out in almost like a kind of, what is it? Ash Wednesday style.
Yeah. Damn. Didn't even catch that.
That's religion, baby.
That's religion. Yeah, so kills the mom and then turns, and does she shoot the doll?
No. So she pulls the child away from the doll and she points the gun at the doll because she's like, I gotta free this girl from this control. There's that piece of her that is being controlled by this thing and I need to destroy it. And the bullet just never comes because the gun is completely empty.
Right.
The gun only had 3 bullets in it, which was just enough to kill the mom, the dad, and her own mother.
Yeah.
So she was she eventually just goes, all right, well, I have to leave this here, knowing that even though Longlegs is dead and my mom is dead and the doll that was attached to me is dead, there's always going to be a part of this whole horrible thing that is still inside of me that I'll never be able to get out.
Mm.
And then the movie is over. We get one shot of Longlegs alive in the interrogation room, and he goes, "Hail Satan!"
And he blows us a kiss and winks at us.
Which is like such a fun little vaudevillian ending for this crazy intense movie.
Yeah, it is cartoonish, but it still works. It's very funny. It's good to. They really needed to send us off with one last look at him, you know?
Yeah.
I couldn't leave this movie on Mike Monroe. I needed to see him at the end.
But yeah, that's fucking Longlegs, bro.
It is weird, dude. It is a weird movie. I do feel like I need to see it like 1 or 2 more times.
I want to see this movie like 100 more times.
To catch a bunch of stuff that I didn't the first time. It's going to be one of those movies where it's like I don't know how often I'm going to watch it after I get like the full scope, you know, because it's kind of like Hereditary where I feel like I'm going to have to like leave it for a while before I watch it again.
I would say there has been some comparison to Hereditary online because of the way that this movie like promoted itself as like the scariest movie of the year and stuff. So people, a huge swath of people online kind of use Hereditary as the barometer of like what is or is not scary in a modern release. And there are a lot of similarities. It is very family trauma driven. It's all about the revelations of like objective truths that you're unaware of. Mm-hmm. There is a big emphasis on occult like practices and demonology and stuff, along with a lot of fucking head trauma.
But yeah, man, I mean, I like I said, I'm gonna need to see it a couple more times. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I mean, I thought it was. You just get like so wrapped up in it watching it. You just feel like you're in there experiencing things with Monroe, even if you have no fucking idea what's going on. It just is like a cool little world to live in.
It's so stylish. It's very sleek. It's very easy to get lost in. There's lots of fun like imagery and just really well researched and well put together world building and lore that I think this movie is going to go down in a similar vein of Blair Witch as far as like this weird movie that has this otherworldly like real life experience that you can dive into. Mm-hmm. It's just so cool. Reading through that huge Reddit thread that took place across essentially like 2 months during the press tour of like all of these like code crackers online just getting down and like nitty gritty with the fucking ciphers.
Yeah.
And like watching them as I'm reading the chat post, it's like, here's 19 days ago. Hey, I've updated this much. I understand this much of the cipher. Here's what I have. You have to do XYZ to get it. And then like 2 days later, a different user shows up and he's like, hey, I've cracked this part of the cipher. Does anyone have this part? And like the whole community like getting together to like experience this weird rollout at the same time. And what I'm most excited for,
they're going to be doing post-release information.
So after the second update of the site, they promised a final update that's going to be coming out on Monday the 15th. And I have absolutely no fucking clue what's going to hit that website. But you know I am going to be feverishly fucking scanning Reddit for the cipher cracker who gives me the information that I need. Like I said when I left the movie and at the beginning of this episode, I knew that there was like a missing piece still, and I just can't wait to see what that is tomorrow. And this episode comes out, unfortunately, either Tuesday or Wednesday, and we're just going to have to talk about it on the next episode.
Yeah, I think we will.
But that's Longlegs.
Yeah, that's Longlegs, man. It's a weird movie. I think you got to go see it, though.
Everyone has to go see this movie. You really just have to. This movie is doing crazy numbers at the box office. It's doing great numbers for Neon. It's blowing their previous record, which was set earlier this year, out of the water.
With Immaculate, right?
Yeah.
The two of Neon's biggest movies ever, one after the other.
And it's funny. I see all these people online who are like, A24, fight back. What are you doing? They beating your ass out here.
Hey, there's room for everybody.
There's room for everybody.
There's room for A24 and Neon. They can all be doing good.
You know Blumhouse is building a room big enough to fit fucking Neon in it.
Well, Blumhouse has their video game escape raft just in case, you know.
Speaking of escape rafts, we're getting wet. We're getting wet again next week, right?
We're heading out.
Wet movie.
Yeah, we have the boat already chartered. We're off. John Cena might be there. We still haven't confirmed.
I can't wait to find out whether or not John Cena is going to be on the show next week.
I know it's going to be real.
The co-producer of the show.
A really good chance, guys. There's a non-zero chance that John Cena could somehow make his way here.
True. Technically.
But yeah, we're going to be back in the water. We're going to be doing a whole episode dedicated to everybody's finned friends from the ocean. We'll do a shark episode. I'm very excited about it. I just watched Shudder's shark exploitation film, which I'll be like definitely using a lot as reference.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited to take a look at that. You know, once again, like a lot of these other wet horrors, the shark genre I've dipped my toe into. I've seen a couple of the Reef movies. I've seen what was that other one we just watched the other day?
Shallows.
The Shallows. I've seen that. You know, I've seen some of the crazier Sharknadoes and the Meg. Love the Meg. So it'll be fun to kind of see what other shark exploitation is going on out there.
A lot. And it's all very interesting.
Well, they're just going to have to wait till next week till we can get inside the shark cage and really poke fun at some finned individuals.
Yeah, exactly. Until then, you can always catch us streaming on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/The Devil's Cut TV. We stream Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 8 until midnight or whenever we decide we want to stop.
Mm-hmm. We're going to be getting into Bioshock 2.
Bioshock 2, we've been playing Subnautica.
I think we're going to start splitting up the week like that because I can't be around for the next couple Wednesday, Thursdays because of my new work schedule. So we might be playing Subnautica a few days.
And I leave early some nights, so it works out.
Yeah. But yeah, tune in. Devil's Cut TV at Twitch.
Yeah. You can find the link in the description, along with the link to our social medias and link to our free public Discord. So follow us, join us,
Join us.
and keep it real. We'll catch you later, everybody.